This episode has gone on so many tangents so far, and I think it's really helpful. And originally, when I wrote this down yesterday, I was like, what am I going to do the podcast on? Oh, we'll talk about second phase. And I was thinking, oh, let's get really strategic. We'll get down to, here's like the specific steps you need if you're going to go from being this type of trainer to this type of coach. You need to do these specific steps. And as I thought about it more, I was like, no, it's actually like a lot of these products out there that promise us steps, that promise us the way to get from point A to point B by just doing this. It forgets a lot about this other stuff that is what actually, when we see people who have the success that we want to have, they're doing this work. They're thinking about, what do I want my week to actually be? What do I want? I've only got limited time. How do I want to use that time? How can I be more present when I'm not working, so I'm not just thinking about work all the time? Hello, trainers and coaches. Today, we're talking about creating a second act in your fitness career. So by that, I mean, maybe you've been doing something for a long period of time. You've been working with one-on-one with clients, and you're like, now I want to do more group stuff. I want to leverage my time a bit better. Or maybe you've been doing group stuff, and you're like, I really miss working one-on-one with clients. I want to charge a lot of money and I know a lot of stuff, and I want to really help people reach their athletic goals. Maybe you're like, I want to give this online stuff a go. Maybe you've been doing the online stuff and you're like, oh, actually, I really miss training people face to face. I want to go back to that. Maybe you're coming up on retirement age and you want to ease back. Or maybe your kids are all grown up and you've got more time to put into your business, and you want to really make a go of this thing that's kind of been a part-time hobby for the next few years until you do reach that time when you want to retire. Whatever it is, there's always these periods where we go through change in our fitness career. And I've been through several of them myself. Some were quite short, some were long. It was always tricky. And today I want to share with you one tool that's worked really well, and then just a few other supportive things that can help you work out what it is you want to do. So let's dive in. And to kick things off, I'm going to share with you my own story and some of my own changes, because you all seem to really like it when I share stories. And then I'm going to share with you a little bit more about how to make some changes yourself. So I don't know if I've actually shared this story with this audience before. I've certainly shared it with people in other situations, especially like other business owners and things like that. But today I'm going to share very briefly the story of how I went from running a very successful boot camp to leaving all that behind and moving overseas and starting to go full-time online, but not as an online fitness coach, but as someone who is providing training resources and ideas for other fitness coaches. And it all started, where do I start with this? This is the problem with the podcast, is I want you to be like, ask me a question to get me started. And of course, you can't ask me a question. So hopefully you enjoy that and you don't find these side tangents annoying, and instead you find them actually helpful. Let's have a little sip of coffee and we'll get started. All right. So back when I was running boot camps, I ran my boot camp for about 4 years. And at about the 3.5 year mark, I've been playing around with boot camp ideas, the website boot camp ideas. It had grown quite a following, and I'd sold an ebook through there, and I was promoting some other people's ebooks, these collections of workouts, and it wasn't making enough to live off, but there was enough there that I was like, there's something here that I think I could have a go at this, of trying to grow this and make it into something bigger. But I couldn't do that and work full-time as a trainer. At that time, I was running 10 sessions a week, 10 bootcamp sessions a week. And then I was also had a PT clients. I was running these strength camp sessions, which are like semi-private sessions, so groups of 4 in that. And yeah, it's very busy. I didn't always have the energy to then come home and work on the computer and create stuff. I was sort of doing the bare minimum to just keep things ticking over. So I thought it'd be fun, it'd be interesting. There was like this desire there, and it was actually a shower I was having one day after training clients, where it really clicked that I was like, I think what I need is to be around other people who are doing online stuff and really understand like what it's going to take if this is something that I want to pursue. And that was really all happening in the US. So, now it's happening everywhere. It seems crazy, but this was 10 years ago, and it's crazy how quickly things change. That 10 years ago, people in Australia didn't really understand the concept of an online business. We didn't have Amazon here in Australia yet. Even a lot of the big chains didn't have online stores. Like now you can get all your groceries, and all the big chains have online shops that you can order through, and it's very different to how it was. So I had the shower, and in the shower I was like, this is feels like a very clear path of what I need to do next. And one of the things I did leading up to that to sort of create space to be able to like make this change was the tool that I want to share today, which is like creating like a perfect day or a perfect week. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that is in a sec. So I did that. I was able to start scaling back with work, which gave me more time to prepare to get going, and also more time to start developing products and things that would start supporting me when I made the change. So I'm kind of conscious as I'm sharing this story that it's not a hero's journey. It's not like a movie. It was my real life. At the time, there was a lot of scary things about packing everything up, and there was definitely moments of, am I doing the right thing? It seemed like this is something I need to try in order to open up more options for myself. If I'm just always going to do the same thing, I'm just always going to do the same thing. And I can't wait for like a lightning bolt to come in and change everything up. So if I have this interest that I want to follow, I need to start pursuing it. So then we'll fast forward 6 months, we've moved overseas. I'm trying to get bootcamp ideas to a point where it's making some money, making enough money for me to live off. And I'm trying, I think pretty much every month, within 12 months, I tried like 15 different things, which is just crazy now to look back at. But yeah, 15 different products, offerings that I put out there. I was used to living a trainer lifestyle where you had appointments and you kind of had fixed things in your life. And now I was going to having completely wide open schedule where I could do whatever I want, whenever I wanted. And that in some ways is a bit of a curse, because you never feel like you're doing enough. You always feel like there's more you could be doing. And anytime you take any time off to do something, you feel like that's time that you could have been serving people and doing stuff for people. So what did I do? I came back to my exercise again. I was like, what would my perfect day or my perfect week look like? And I spent some time thinking about that, and I was able to create some structure for myself, which then allowed me to do my best work. That eventually led to Bootcraft, which is now a 10-year-old membership site, which is just crazy in the world of the internet. Like and not to toot my own horn, but that's a very immense success. And I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. That's a huge success in the online world, and in a big part to you listening to this as well, and the people who've been members. It's been a massive triumph. And I will credit a large part of it to doing this perfect day, perfect week exercise. And I'd say perfect day, perfect week is because I used to do this as a perfect day thing, and now I do this as a perfect week thing, because I think having a perfect day creates kind of this unattainable goal that you'll never reach. But when you look at things over a week, I think we tend to be a little bit more forgiving with how we plan things out. So what am I talking about? Let's talk about this exercise. So if you are thinking about making a change that's going to uproot your schedule, or where you're going to need to be putting time into things differently than you currently are, it's helpful to have a bit of a template of where you're trying to go, because so often we focus on what we don't want. We're like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like that I have to get up early, or I don't like that I have clients in the evenings, I don't like this client, I don't like that I only get paid every 6 weeks when people sign up again, I don't like when people don't shop. We're very good at identifying the things that we don't like. Just hang out with a group of people having a conversation for 5 or 10 minutes, and I guarantee you there'll be plenty of discussion about what people don't like, and it'll just lead down a rabbit hole of don't like. What this exercise does is it makes you think about what would you like. And so then instead of moving away from something, we're moving towards something. And that's much more powerful, because moving away from something is more of a fight or flight thing, isn't it? It's like, all right, we're going to run away, or we're going to fight this thing that we don't like. Whereas moving towards something shows intention. We're going to intentionally make changes in our life to move towards this goal. So, how do we do it? To create your perfect week, you want to focus on visuals. So by that I mean, we don't want to just be like, I do this. We want to think about, this is how I want to feel. This is how I would physically like something to look. Describe it in detail. So take your week as it is now. Take a blank page, write on it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the first thing you're going to be tempted to do on this blank page is to fill it up with as much stuff as possible. But usually, when we think about our perfect week, we think about having downtime. We think about time to relax. We think about time to just think about things. If you want to make a change in your career where you're putting more intention into perhaps the way you're training people, the way you're coaching people, one thing you're going to need is just space to think about that. Space to process all the things you're learning and turn it into something unique. So we don't actually want to fill this thing up too much. But start having a think about how you want your mornings perhaps to flow. Maybe it's boring to you to have the same morning every single morning. Maybe you love the idea of having the same morning every morning. For me, I like to have some variety. I've learned that about myself. Many times when I tried to create the perfect day, I would last like a week and then it would fall over. And it wasn't until I started thinking about things zoomed out. And a great person who's stuff to read around this, and you can sign up to his newsletter for free, but he's also got 2 great books, is Oliver Burkeman. He's got a great newsletter. It comes out every other week. It's called The Imperfectionist. I highly recommend it as a way to start thinking differently about setting up your weeks and what a perfect week might look like to you. Because so often when we do these things, we do tend to try to fill it up with as much stuff as possible. But in reality, that's why I'm like, visualizing what you want can be really helpful, because not in like that we're talking about The Secret and you're just going to visualize this thing and it's going to come into fruition. It's more about visualizing the thing, because when we actually sit down and think about how do I want to feel, how do I want things to look, it's not usually that I want appointments from 6 o'clock in the morning till 8 p.m. at night. That's not usually how we want. Usually we want space to play, space to think. So write you got your piece of paper, start filling in the things that you want to do. So you might fill in, when do you want to work? When do you want to train clients? Assuming that you're making a pivot in your fitness career, scaling back or working more, when would you like that to be? Forget for a moment about when people are available. Like obviously there are some realities there, but I want you to let go of that at the moment. I want you to focus on what you would like. What do you want this to be? This is all about setting up a change in your career that feels really good. So think about, when do you want to work? And maybe it is something weird. Maybe you don't want to start work till 9. You don't want to do early mornings anymore. That's okay. Put that down, because now you've got an intention that you're moving towards. And if people like your stuff, they will come. Like, I've got an appointment at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's not necessarily a convenient time for me, but I see value in this appointment, that I'm going to move my schedule around to make it work. And it'll be the same thing for you. And it was funny, when I was working in a high-end PT studio, I had clients all day long. There was no quiet period because these were like self-employed people who were earning great money. They were very good at what they did. And they understood that taking time off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock in the morning, even though they're not working, was still a good investment in their time to come and do their workout then. So start with when you want to work, when you want to see clients, and then you can go from there. Then have a think about what are the other things you want in your life? Like, what are the other things that feel nourishing to you? Maybe you love learning. So maybe you have a day each week that's just devoted to learning. Maybe you're doing a course that you're working on. Maybe you're reading books. Maybe you're just trying to put what you're learning into action. But have that space at some point in your week. Have a nice, spacious period where you can do that. It doesn't mean it has to always be that. Again, this is more about like having something to move towards. The other thing is, of course, we're being selfish here. We've talked about our work. We've talked about our learning. What about your family? How do you want that to look? How do you want your time that you're spending with your family to look? By thinking about this stuff first, you're going to be amazed when you actually do this, how much easier it's going to make the changes that you need to make, help you see the changes you're going to need to make. Because maybe you're like, oh, I really want to do this, but I've got these 2 classes on in the evening. I was like, I don't want to work evenings anymore, but I've got 2 classes on in the evening, and I've got clients who've been coming for a long time, and I really, I just feel bad like letting them go, but the classes aren't making enough to really like justify hiring another trainer, or maybe they won't train with it, they won't accept another trainer. So I'm just going to keep doing these classes. Well, as soon as you do your exercise about your perfect week and you see that in the evenings, actually you've scheduled this wind down time, or you've scheduled family time, or you've scheduled, just general free time, or maybe some other hobbies. Maybe you're like, oh, actually I want to use my evenings. I really miss doing art. So I'm going to use my evenings. I'm going to go do a pottery class or, something like that. At the moment, because you're stuck in that I have to run these 2 classes, you're closing the door to all these things that would actually make you enjoy your life a lot more and would make you be able to show up in a much more powerful way for your clients through their struggles. That's why this can be a really helpful exercise. You can see that you've got the sticking point. You need to cancel these evening classes. Actually putting this down on paper and saying, in my perfect week, there's no evening classes. It makes it very clear, I need to set a date on this. I need to set a date that this class is going to end, and I am going to disappoint people, but I can see, looking at what my perfect week would be, that it's not that I don't have time to dedicate to clients, or that I don't have time to dedicate to what I'm doing. It just means that I know that period of time I need to be using for other stuff, or I need to be exploring different things. And I hope I've explained this well. I purposely didn't write any notes for this podcast episode. I said I just want to get on here and say what needs to be said. So if you get to the end of this episode and you're like, Kyle, I'm still not entirely clear. Look, maybe you've never done this before. You've never tried to create a week. Even the concept of that I can create a week based around what I want to create, and not a week where I'm constantly bending over backwards for others, which it happens as trainers and coaches, that we care about other people, and we care about their success, and we care about their struggles, and we try to fix everything for them. And we actually do everyone in our lives a massive disservice when we do that, because people need to struggle. They need to overcome their own. To build self-esteem, they need to overcome their own obstacles. We can be there to support them. Our goal is to make sure that we're in a good frame of mind, we're healthy, we're fit mentally as well, so that we can support them, and we can go through the really difficult thing of watching someone else struggle and just being there to support them. And by support them, I don't mean fix the problem for them. I mean just support them and let them struggle and let them work it out. I'm probably talking about this because I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old right now. So I'm there with watching them struggle, watching them work things out, wanting to just go in and be like, I'll just do it for you. But one of the hardest things is like I'm going to just be here and be calm and be supportive to you while you're upset or raging or throwing a tantrum or whatever it is. It's the hardest thing. And the way that I do that is when I'm at my best at doing that, because I don't always do that well, I'm still a human being, is when I'm filling my buckets and I'm taking those times. And that doesn't mean necessarily like, oh, I'm going to go to the spa. No, I think for me, it's like getting to do work that lights me up and makes me feel excited. Having time in my day that I can spend learning and thinking about the things that I want to think about. All of that stuff goes a long way to filling my buckets. Self-care is being able to put time aside to pursue the things that you want to pursue. That builds your self-esteem and makes it easier for you to help other people as well. This episode has gone on so many tangents so far, and I think it's really helpful. And originally when I wrote this down yesterday, I was like, what am I going to do the podcast on? Oh, we'll talk about the second phase. And I was thinking, let's get really strategic. We'll get down to, here's like the specific steps you need if you're going to go from being this type of trainer to this type of coach. You need to do these specific steps. And as I thought about it more, I was like, no, it's actually like a lot of these products out there that promise us steps, that promise us the way to get from point A to point B by just doing this. It forgets a lot about this other stuff that is what actually, when we see people who have the success that we want to have, they're doing this work. They're thinking about, what do I want my week to actually be? What do I want? I've only got limited time. How do I want to use that time? How can I be more present when I'm not working? So I'm not just thinking about work all the time. Like, how can I make sure that I'm, as much as life will just throw curveballs at us and we can't really control anything anyway, but how can we actually use this moment? We can control what we're doing in this moment. How can we use this moment to move towards what we would like? And just spending some time thinking about, what would you like your second act of your fitness career to look like? Go big, dream wild. Do not hold yourself back here. Do not let your rational self step in here and be like, oh, that's not going to work. That's going to work. Life's going to do that anyway. You don't need to do that to yourself. Life is going to throw in roadblocks. You don't need to say, oh, I'm going to just cross that off my list because that is unattainable. I think, dream big. And I would love, if you do this, for you to share with me, because I would find it very interesting. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode. Have a great week. I hope this has given you lots of things to think about and a bit of a different way to think about it, that it's not always about the step-by-step to get where we want to go. Sometimes it's about just being really clear on where we want to go. And then when the opportunities come along, when the invitations come do this, come try this, it makes it so much easier for us to know which ones to say yes to and which ones to say no to. And so with that, I'll leave you there. One last thing, actually, before I go, if you enjoyed today's episode, normally I'd be like, oh, come do this podcast, come listen to this podcast. I'm putting together a mentorship. We're going to have regular calls to talk more about this kind of stuff. And I'm also going to get into some of the more practical stuff, like how I'm using AI at the moment, which I'm like, oh, AI. Ugh. But the way I'm using it now, it's actually genuinely helpful. It's kind of like just having an assistant that helps me and knows exactly how I think. And that's really helpful. We're going to talk about things like newsletters and all the practical stuff as well. But we're going to talk about this kind of stuff too, about like, how do you improve your skills as a coach? How do you improve your career to be more what you want it to be? So you're feeling successful, you're feeling energized by it, and you're not worrying about burning out or anything like that, because you know where those boundaries are, you know where the line is, and you also are just genuinely enjoying life too, which I think sometimes is really difficult to do these days, because there's lots of things that are trying to distract us, that are trying to grab our attention, point us in different directions, and it's really easy to get off track and start wanting what other people want instead of wanting what we want. So if you're interested in that, please go to bootcampideas.com/mentorship. There'll just be a little email opt-in. Just pop your email in there, and yeah, I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, I'm excited to get that up and running. And I will chat to you next week.